thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I've been with the Lighthouse for, like she says, 10 years. I started off in a community service program where we would go door to door, help folks that were seniors, just adapt to age and disease-related vision loss. And it's kind of grown from there. I made the mistake of letting them promote me, and that's happened a few times. And so now I am the Vice President for Rehab, Community Initiatives, and then also Business Services. I just picked that up here in the last month. And what the Lighthouse for the Blind does is we provide opportunities for people who are blind or visually impaired. We do this in a multifaceted kind of an approach. The first is through employment. We're the largest single employer of people who are blind or visually impaired in North Texas. When we're fully staffed, we have about 230, 240 individuals who work primarily in our industrial and manufacturing facility. This is the real deal. It's what's called vertically integrated manufacturing and industrial. We work on large government contracts. We are ISO certified, which is an industry standard that shows you have to qualify and prove all the benchmarks of qualities and efficiencies, workflow analysis, on-time delivery, all of the elements that go into that, so that when you get these companies that come in, they know that your quality level is going to be very high. Now the challenge, of course, is they don't make industrial equipment for people who are blind or visually impaired. We have to take standard equipment and find ways to modify that or retrofit it so that that job then becomes accessible. In the Lighthouse, for example, we have an injection molding shop division. If you've seen the Discovery Channel, How Stuff's Made, they filmed that at the Lighthouse for the Blind when we were making highlighters. We make 16 million highlighters a year from scratch, raw material, raw polypropylene beads, pulls it up in the hopper, injection molds, it comes out in individual pieces, and people separate and sort that. Then it goes to the assembly line, and people do the different components of putting in the filters, injecting the ink, the plugs, the labeling, the packaging. We have a full shipping and receiving warehouse. We also have a binder line, vinyl binders. We make about 2 million military award binders a year. A friend of mine just retired from the Air Force 24 years in, and every single binder he got came from the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind. You know, every transfer, every commendation, every promotion, everything. And so we're able to do that in a unique way as well. This is where we changed the game from typical for-profits and not-for-profit. I have 3 carousels on the vinyl line, and they're not very efficient on the speed in which they make binders. Crank about 1 a minute. But it is very efficient at keeping 5 people employed. I have a robot in the corner that will run all day long. You know, if I was a for-profit company, I'd have 3 robots. But what we do is we hire people. That's our objective. We make a lot of cool things, 900,000 eyeglass cases a year. You know, we have a sewing center. We do reflective vests, dog vests, shirts, a lot of things for the military with all the modular gear that they wear as well. But we don't hire people to make these things. We make these things so that we can hire people. On that side of the industry, that's what we're about, is creating jobs and opportunities. Now you've got a group of people who are employed, and they're also mostly on some form of disability. They can supplement the two, raise their quality of life. We have about a 50 or 60% Hispanic community that works with us. Now, traditionally, the dropout rate for them in high school is 50%. But now they're positioned better so that their children are positioned better to complete high school. And now the next challenge is, how do we help parents who are unfamiliar with the challenges coming from high school and beyond prepare their children for those challenges? So we work together to develop that as well. We're about providing opportunities. Yeah, anytime you want to jump in with one of those.
So you all are working primarily with adults, I'm assuming 18 and up.
18 to 65, yeah, in that range. We don't work with them younger than that because of liability issues just with the industrial equipment and the machinery and all. And the neat thing about these jobs as well is they're transferable skills. Because we're using standard equipment with reasonable accommodation, other employers can employ them. If they move to Phoenix, they can work in an injection molding shop.
So do you pay them market rates or below market?
Oh no, minimum wage and up. We are the real deal. We're not a sheltered workshop. Sheltered workshops will pay less than minimum wage and don't have benefits. We've got minimum wage, health, medical, dental, the whole retirement, safety bonuses, which there's a way to structure that so that it doesn't offset their income. It's an unexpected gain. There's 2 months a year that have 3 weeks or 3 paychecks, and we have to help them with IRS understand they didn't exceed their earning capacity. It's averaged out over the 26 checks, you know, that kind of a thing. And so, yeah, we're the real deal. Reagan came along in the 80s and said, look, if we're going to give the visually impaired a little bit more of a bump on their disability, it's got to be competitive employment, you know, on-time delivery. So those highlighters I talked about, if you can come to the, you know, go to Office Max and get them in a week, if you order them, you have to do the same from us. And it's really helped raise that bar of what is an employable skill set in the community, you know. The other side of the world is what I do, everything that's non-industrial. I have an Assistive Technology Lab where we teach people who are blind or visually impaired how to use computers with specialized software and or hardware. We have a low vision side, we have a no vision side. Low vision is electronic magnification, color enhancements, some limited speech. The no vision side, I've got folks that are completely blind. They don't need a mouse, they don't need a monitor, and everything is speech driven through a program similar to something called JAWS, which stands for Job Access with Speech. And they are more efficient than I am. It's hilarious because I take these guys on training trips down to Austin to get certified. And I'm the slowest one because I'm visual. I'm looking around for the icon, I'm looking for this, I'm trying to find it. And conceptually, they're just moving through the system with keyboard commands. The neat thing about those keyboard commands is it's completely customizable as well. Say if I'm training somebody to work for a stockbroker, and they have a format that they use where they tab through with keyboard commands. If those commands conflict with JAWS or any of the other software, we can simply change what those commands are for us. It doesn't affect it the end user. The employers are going to say, well, reasonable accommodation. We have to let them know it's much more reasonable than they understand it to be because of technology. 200 years ago, your eyeglasses were state of the art. They thought Benjamin Franklin was a wizard. He had to shape glass so people could see. You know, and now, if you have an iPhone, which I've turned off so it wouldn't ring today, you have everything built into that platform that you need to be completely blind and move through the system. It's built into the platform. It's called Zoom if you're low vision or VoiceOver if you're completely blind. It has everything that you need. I have 5 employees in my tech lab. All are either completely blind or severely visually impaired. And they use these gadgets in and out. I've lost 2 employees to Microsoft. They've come in and they've stolen them away to try to keep up with Apple. And so on the one hand, I was upset I lost a good employee. I lost 2. On the other hand, I went to my bosses and I said, hey, their skill set value just increased. We got to give these guys a raise. I can pay my instructors about $50,000 a year. Because in the state of Texas, there are only 30 people who have the approvals to teach assistive technology to folks who are blind or visually impaired. And so I get to make a difference. Now, one guy, Armando, he says, no, don't pay me that much. You know, I still have kids in high school. I'm making more than that, you know, because of the way that the system balances out. And so we try to get them young, get them off the system entirely. We had to introduce one of our guys to this thing called taxes. He's like, hey, what's this? I was like, it's called equality, brother, you know. And so the other neat thing about having 5 people in my tech lab that are all visually impaired is when somebody comes in who's dealing with these challenges, we understand it.
Right.
And they see that we do. It's not just, people aren't just born blind. There are accidents. I mean, if something were to happen to you and you can't read anymore, you're not illiterate. You simply have to find a different method to read. You know, we have to make that adjustment. You can't tell now because of my affinity for the chili dog, you know. But I used to be an athlete. I had reconstructive surgery back in the 80s, and I was a prodigy. I was supposed to be the next big thing in swimming. I was hydrodynamic, and it turned out that I was missing pieces. I don't have a chest muscle here or here, the small tie into the front shoulder. So I was asymmetrical in how I moved through the water. It gave me a gallop, and I was setting records. It was hilarious. Had surgery and all that went away. You know, the scholarships, things like that. But the big challenge I had to deal with was, if I'm not able to do this anymore, who am I? This is how I identified myself. And had to realize, this isn't who I am. This is just what I do. You know? So let's ask the bigger questions. And we'll get people that have come to us that have never had expectations, and suddenly they're learning things that they never thought was even an option to them. You know, I can do these jobs, I can work on computers, I can do all this kind of stuff. And it's really neat to see that light come on and the transformation change. And so we deal with everybody that's either vocationally, looking for some kind of an opportunity, people that are just trying to keep up with the digital age and follow their kids and grandkids on the Twitterverse and all the different gadgets that are out there. We do that as well, iPad training. We have a program called Serving Our Seniors. It's for seniors. We do seminars in the community on age and disease-related vision loss, what that means in layman's terms. A lot of times it gets talked over the people's heads in medical terminology that they don't understand. And a lot of times doctors talk to the diagnosis rather than the individual. Magnification is a neat thing. When you magnify something, it gets bigger, but you see less of it, okay? Specialists look at the problem. They're really good at spotting that. Getting them to pull back out to see the solution is the issue, and the solution lies with each individual, what their strengths and weaknesses are, their experiences, that kind of a thing. And so we do these seminars. We go out to assisted independent living centers, community activity groups. We tell them all about the things that we do, the devices that are available that you saw in the store to a degree, talking watches, large print. Yes? Okay. All the kind of things, high contrast, tactile dots so that you can feel the buttons on the microwave because now all the control panels are smooth. And then the follow-up question is, how do we get this stuff for free? We're seniors. I'm on a fixed income. I've surrendered all my assets to an assisted living group. I'm trying to figure out, should I go to Canada and get medicine, feed the cat, or pay my bills? And so I don't get money from any individuals. I have a group of folks that raise money for me. So we go one-on-one to people's homes. We do an assessment to see what they have, how they're dealing with it, and then whatever we have that's helpful for them, we give them at no cost. I don't care if you live on Turtle Creek. I don't care if you're living in a house that's burned, that's never been repaired, and we've done both. We just provide it across the board. We see about 615 people through that program a year in their homes, and about 17 or 1,800 through the seminars. I've also got a scholarship fund going in my technology lab that allows me to have seniors or anybody really come in. I use an awesome system I call favoritism. And if you come in and you tell me you need it, I give it to you. Our link went down. And so I can provide computer training at no cost, And I don't tell people that at the state, and I don't tell people that at the VA, But there are times that they'll have equipment needs that they just can't get. Both the state and the VA have a system called hurry up and wait, right? And so they may come to me and say,
Very effective too.
yeah, right. They do this thing called a price impasse. Just means they refuse to pay sometimes because they want to squeeze a little bit more in the contracts. We're able on the industrial side to compete because our margins are so low. We can survive at 5% when most people couldn't, because ultimately our goal is to provide employment, just cover the bill,
You guys partner with DARS in any way to get
Yep, we sure do.
referrals? Okay.
DARS, the large state agency, the Department of Assistive and Rehab Services, has several divisions. There's a specific division called the Division for Blind Services, and there's an office in Dallas. And so they'll have 3 different kinds of counselors available. A vocational rehab counselor, that's what we primarily work with. They've done an action plan on somebody. They've said, given them basically an aptitude ballot that said, this is where we feel your strengths and weaknesses are based off of some profiles and personality and dexterity things and intelligence things. They come to us with a plan. We do a baseline assessment to see where they are, and then we begin from there. We get them up to certain levels of proficiency, first of all with keyboarding, 30 words a minute. Then they're proficient enough with the keyboard that's completely blank to then learn whatever their tool is going to be. If it's a magnification like a Zoom text tool, they'll learn that. If it's no vision like JAWS, they'll learn that. Then we teach them how to implement the tool. This is called modular, it's called sequential, and it's mastery based. Okay?
When did this start?
The Assistive Technology Lab at the Lighthouse has been around 20 years or so. It's gone through generations. The latest generation that it's in now, about 6 years.
What
You know.
area do y'all cover?
16 counties, all the way from Corsicana to Oklahoma. There's a lighthouse in Tyler. We'll meet you halfway. We refer folks to Tyler, and there's a lighthouse in Fort Worth. I used to get a lot of restricted funding from the United Way that said you can work in the greater Dallas area because that's what United Way Metropolitan Dallas does. You can work outside that, we just can't count your people, okay? The United Way has changed dramatically. We don't get hardly any funding from them anymore. They no longer have any category of funding for disability of any kind.
Well, their funding has been cut back.
No, they're making tons of money, tons of money. There's no funding source at all through United Way for seniors, and there's nothing for independents. Right.
So the priorities have shifted, basically.
The priorities shifted. They did what I refer to as going a bit commercial. I've been working with folks that are physically or developmentally disabled since '85. When I had my surgery in 1980, that changed what my plan was in life. And I started working at the state school in Fort Worth. And at the time, Eunice Shriver was in charge of, Special Olympics. Well, she got a little bit older for the day-to-day routine of it, and they had an opportunity to get McDonald's as a sponsor. But McDonald's didn't want somebody on their commercial who was drooling on their shirt, as harsh as that sounds. So what did they do? They raised the minimum requirement for the Special Olympics to 70, on the IQ. On a bad day, I'm close to 70. When we were doing special, I was an internationally certified Special Olympic coach. The shot put was a softball, Now there's downhill skiing and equestrian, and while that's great, all the attention is up at the international level, and all the guys at the local level get no recognition. And so the United Way did a similar thing in that the economy hit, the bubble burst, housing, TARP, all the rollouts come, and people start talking about where the funding dollars are going to go. I deal with quality of life issues. Most people with disabilities deal with the quality of life. Well, that's subjective. That's figure skating. It's not objective. So I had to come up with an objective way to measure a subjective activity. So I did that. And it put it off for about a year. They went with the big ones, education. We want kids to go from high school to go to college. We want employment, and we want health. We don't want kids that are obese. The dilemma for folks like us, nonprofits, is education, health, things like that, fitness. They have other resources available. We don't, And so we're all kind of scrambling for a piece of the solution, Yogi Berra had this great line. He was up in New York, and they brought him a pizza. And I'm from Boston. And the East Coast, they cut the pizza at your table, right? And they say, Yogi, how many slices do you want, 6 or 8? He says, cut 6. We couldn't eat 8.
Yeah.
Right? When you slice a pizza, all of a sudden people take their piece out of it. What we have to do in the nonprofit world is work collaboratively for the same subjective issue of quality of life and opportunity. So that's the challenge that we face. Well, there are 10 lighthouses in the state of Texas.
Okay.
We're the oldest. We were founded in 1931. I think that makes us 83 years if I'm doing the math right. There's one in Dallas, Tyler. There's Corpus Christi has one. Austin, San Antonio, El Paso, Houston. And so there are lighthouses throughout the state and throughout the country. Chicago Lighthouse has a magnificent one. Up in Boston, you've got the Perkins Institute, and they're also dealing with the brailing machines and everything as well. So we're kind of under an umbrella. We each serve our communities based on the needs of our community. Some are very rural, some are urban, some in between, that kind of a thing. So yeah, there are other organizations we try to partner with. We have a non-compete agreement. San Antonio makes parachutes. I won't make parachutes, but they won't make safety vests. Seattle does metal for Boeing, that kind of a thing. So, and that happens where we have folks that are in either assisted or independent living. There's a skill set that goes around about learning some of those issues. And another preconception is that we'll have someone, right, and we have to teach that. This is sensitivity training, just an exposure. And it's one of those things that until you've been exposed to it, you don't really get it, And one of the other things I was going to mention, we'll get somebody who's got a child who's blind, and they'll bring them to us thinking they'll fit in great. This is great. They'll go to the Lighthouse. Doesn't mean that they're used to being around 200 other people that are blind.
Yeah.
Bumping into them, kicked it. I didn't feed your dog. He stole my sandwich. Your Whataburger bag feels a lot like mine. All the different things that go with that. So I started a program with the Division for Blind Services to do a trial work where they can come in, experience a little bit of it, and then we can evaluate to see, are they ready for an 8-hour day? Can they travel independently? You know, can they follow some basic instructions? And just where are they in their journey of navigating the things that are in front of them? Typically, the things that are in front of them are one of either an obstacle or it's a barrier. Most of the time they're obstacles. Most of the time people perceive them as barriers. But it is a perceptual thing. So we teach people how to overcome those. What's the skill set? You put your kid in an obstacle course in school. They get to the wall with the rope. If they don't know the technique, hand over hand, foot over foot, they want to quit, they get disappointed, they get frustrated, you know. Teach them that technique and then they can overcome it. Get to the Army, that wall's bigger and there is no rope. So you don't do it by yourself.
That was an issues.
We do work with the Dallas VA. We've got a really good relationship with them. And we do the computer training in our Assistive Technology Lab. The unfortunate effect of a lot of the visual impairments that are coming back from the Middle East now is that they're the result of an IED, which means their head was sticking outside of a turret. So they've also got some kind of a traumatic brain injury as well. It brings with it some different challenges, but we work through those the best that we can, but primarily it's just for the Assistive Technology Lab. Yeah. The newest Dragon is good. The old Dragon was horrible. It was a nice idea, but there were people, we hear people that said, man, I was in that booth for 3 hours and it just will not recognize my language. Right.
I don't know what.
Right. Microsoft,
What it is, I don't know.
right. They tried to add some things. They're very wishy-washy.
Does this mean
They,
anything to you?
the problem with some of theirs is when you change a command with Microsoft for the accessibility features is what he's referring to. Make the mouse pointer bigger, do some things like that, enlargement, and some voice recognition. It actually changes the commands of the system
Yeah, it's
instead of enhancing it.
Okay.
Apple has done a great job enhancing the system.
great accessibility.
So if you tap on the little button 3 times, Siri's going to ask you, what do you need?
Communication.
Through the Dragon, yeah, you'll wear a headset and it'll walk you through a verbal menu. You know, on a keyboard application like JAWS, Job Access with Speech, it's for the completely blind, it's keyboard functions that will do that. When you think of somebody who's blind, you think of the guy with the cane, right? The way that they move through the environment is called orientation and mobility. It's a very definite skill set. How do I orient myself to where I am? Then how do I move safely through that environment? We do the same thing with technology when you don't see it. How do I orient myself to where I am, conceptually? How do I navigate through this? Dragon, the latest version of it, has become much better. And you can wear a headset and you can say, Microsoft Word, open a document. It gives you a sound effect that that's happened, or it will even tell you. And you say, type a letter to mom, comma. You know, I'm missing the lasagna, which we all know is spaghetti flavored cake. Why don't you make it for my half birthday that's coming up? It's not fair that Paul gets a half birthday and the other 3 of us don't. Love, Terry. You know, but read it back to me. It'll read it back to you, you know. And then you can send it off, send as a thing, send as an attachment, you know. You label pictures in a different way. All your digital cameras, when you unload a picture, it's got all these numbers and digits.
Image dash zeros.
Right, right. You give it descriptors, and then that way it can say, send the picture of me and the kid when he was on the skateboard. And it'll find that in a database. And so it's just ways of, if you're going to be blind, man, this is the best time, technology-wise. If you have to be blind, this is the best time.
Do you do any of the echo stuff?
No, the echolocation, they just did a story about that kid. He's been around for years, and he is an anomaly. That is a
That just
unique
seems
thing.
so phenomenal.
Now, on a much lesser degree, and what she's referring to, if you don't know, is there's a guy, he can ride his bicycle around, and he's got a click that he does that's so sharp and crisp that he's actually able to pick up
He's like a
things
bat.
around him. Yeah, it's echolocation, like a bat, like a dolphin, and he can ride his bicycle in a street and miss cars and things like that.
Which the people with canes kind of did.
The
They're
cane,
tapping.
right, there's different kinds of cane tips, and one of them is a metal tip, and they'll tap along, and you can pick up an echo off of cement or something big.
What is Blake?
Blake,
He's an unusual.
God bless him, I am getting him classes. Blake holds his cane like he's a Moses and walks into everything. It's great. And he'll,
I've never seen him walk
boom,
in.
and he'll walk into someone and go, well, that was a great day. And I'm like, oh, Blake, we're going to get you some classes, you know. But what he actually does, he perseveres. He gets on. He does it. He's stubborn, and he does it his way. And That's part of the strength that you have to find out. The best system,
That's
is-
preserved
The
in
best
those.
system
Oh,
is
yeah.
the one that
That's
works for
preserved.
you.
right, exactly. The one that works for you is the best system.
Well, he just went to
That's what
Hawaii
we're on top
for a
of.
Yeah.
motivational, for a big company with Bank of America.
Right.
He improved their customer service and he trained customer service people for Bank of America.
Yeah. We'll do a thing, we used to go out all the time with the United Way and do what's called the Speakers Bureau. Go to the big, contributors and talk about what we're supposed to go out and talk about what the United Way does and how it makes a difference. Blake will never stay on that script, which is great because he's supposed to do his thing. I'll give you all the numbers and the details and show the impact, but this is it working, And I tell people, nonprofits, here's my tree analogy. It's like the sequoia, biggest tree in the world, right?
I've seen.
Very, very shallow root systems. So shallow that one can't stand by itself because the surface area is so big, a breeze would just knock it right down. So the way you get a forest,
This is what they do.
they hold themselves together.
Yeah.
They defy it, right?
Look at them, you think they should tip over.
So we're all trying to help somebody different. We worked with your mom. I'm already losing some of my marbles,
It
You lose your
wasn't her fault.
mobility.
She was very
You lose some
nervous.
of your hearing, All you have to do to qualify for programs like this is live long enough. At some point, you're going to need something, and we're all in this together. And if we can show people these techniques and we can put them in the position, it doesn't do any good if opportunity knocks if you don't answer. So let's prepare you to answer, but let's encourage you to answer. Let's change the expectations. When you have a baby, special needs, you hold them like this, they got the whole world to grow. They're not going to drop, there's nothing to it. As they get older, from the parent's perspective, all they do is make a minor shift to there. Feels a lot like it, but that's a headlock. Feels really similar to what they're used to. And we have to let them understand, we're going to teach your son or daughter in a way, step by step, modular, sequential, mastery-based. And they wind up so much farther down the road than they would have expected because you don't deal with that. You deal with the step that's in front of you. You're going to drive to Houston at night, turn your headlights on, you don't see Houston. You see 100 feet, drive 100 feet at a time and you'll get there. Trust the equipment. So that's what we do. We help people understand this is an obstacle, not a barrier. My grandfather had macular degeneration, which is a blind spot wherever you look. He was Sicilian, tough as nails. All four of my grandparents came over on the boat. 3 from Ireland, he was from Sicily. If you asked him, how do you deal with that, Charlie? He would say, bad guys never come straight at you anyway. He'd do like this, watch it at angles, watch it at angles. But because he had the grit and because he had the sense of humor, he negotiated obstacles. He wasn't stopped by anything. And so we just try to pass that on to folks. So that's what I do in a nutshell.
I am delighted that we had you to come out.
I'm glad you had me as well. I really appreciate it. This is a unique setup. I'm liking this. This is the future. This is good. This is what my guys deal with all the time. They wouldn't be cut up with a visual deal. They're just connecting and they do a lot of remote stuff. And it's just fun for me to be on the other side of it.
And how do you arrange for tours?
Call me.
Okay.
I'm the tour guy as well. Yeah.
I've got a
Any other
speaker
questions?
line.
He comes out.
Okay. Yeah, he's mentioned he's talked to you. And so anytime we can get out and talk to people, we absolutely love it. Because ironically, the thing I'm looking for that helps support the lighthouse is visibility. I just need the exposure, so that people are
I haven't
aware of
heard
what we
about
do.
it Since I remember as a kid,
The
somebody
brooms
selling
and the light,
stuff
and the
like
light.
that.
Right,
yeah.
right.
They're trying to
Seen
get
it, which
away
I
from
thought was one of the few organizations I really remember that was so unique at that point. And I thought that was a great name.
Yeah.
Lighthouse.
Right. Well, like I say, I grew up I'm from South Boston originally.
Yeah, Lighthouse.
And lighthouses have there's a thing. They don't guarantee safety, but it says when you get lost, or you get a little disoriented, when things slip away from you, here we are, come this way. They're still rocks,
Oh, yeah.
but it's something that's there,
Yeah.
to guide you,
Thank you again.
Hey,
Thank you again.
thank you. I appreciate it.